session will be about the food supplement Green Deal, and Bichani will lead the session. He is Vice Chair at ESNA, the European Specialist Sports Nutrition Alliance, and also Managing Director at Hybolates. To keep time, I will hand over to you, Luca. Thank you so much. And Luca also gave another presentation on our sports nutrition. If you'd like to catch up on that, it's available on demand on our online platform. Thank you.
Natalia, thank you for the introduction. Okay, so let me start by thanking you for the invitation. We are a consulting company. We do regulatory work, technical and regulatory work. And we started to take an interest in green claims some time ago when our customers started asking us about what claims they could use. And then came a number of environmental obligations. We look at compliance of the food, we look at compliance of the labels. And quickly, I think a year and a half ago, we realized that we needed to do the compliance work for food supplements. We needed to understand all the environmental aspects. And as we did that, we started to follow more closely these aspects, and we got interested in the Green Deal. The Green Deal is the flagship policy of the EU, of the European Commission, for the duration of this Commission, and in my view, it's an unprecedented effort to address climate change, environmental issues. I think, certainly in my experience, but even before my experience, more professional experience, it's hard to remember something as comprehensive as what the Commission has put together. Okay, so what I'm going, and then the title Green Deal of Food Supplement is meant to explain that we have this big policy change called the Green Deal, and food supplements need to fit into it in many different ways. So the first theme of my presentation will be what the European Green Deal's policy are and how they might affect our industry. They will certainly affect our industry. Second, within this discussion, I'd like to bring up the sustainable packaging, which is something that I think our industry has not yet tackled as well as other parts of the food industry. And then, naturally, this leads into green claims and the rules that are being prepared on green claims in the EU, and greenwashing, and the issue of greenwashing. And then some thoughts on the probable impacts of the Green Deal on our supply chains. Oh, okay. Okay, so this is from the European Commission, and you will see that the Green Deal does encompass many aspects, certainly from buildings to fresh air, clean water, soil, but we are certainly interested when it comes to foods. And many aspects are related to foods, many other aspects are related to packaging and waste prevention, certainly affecting directly our industry. And then other aspects related to the resilience of industry, for example, and energy. So if you look at the higher level actions, the first aspect is certainly that the European Green Deal aims to make Europe climate neutral by 2050. It's a very ambitious goal, and the closer goal is by 2030, so much closer. And this implies an entire number of changes which eventually affect us as well. Of course, decarbonization of the economy, and so there will be impact on energy prices, and eventually this will cascade to us. And if it comes to agriculture, we have a number of high-level actions that in the detail then will affect us importantly. And this is food security, maybe not directly, but then efforts on reducing the footprint of the environment on the EU food system. I've mentioned resilience before, we'll discuss that again. And then there is an ambition from the EU to set standards globally on sustainability. That's been an aim in various policies in the past for the EU, and in some fields, indeed, the EU has succeeded in setting global standards. So it might be the case that we do the same again. Certainly, and I want to emphasize, as I did 2 days ago, that the changes in the EU in terms of requirements and costs and so on will impact our supply chains even far from Europe. And certainly our partners outside of Europe, we have a part in this industry in terms of suppliers providing services, they will be impacted and will have to comply as well. So technological efforts, and the question is how as food supplements fit into this. Okay, so there will be actions on waste management, and again, impactful for us, and then on the blue economy, on the fishery sector, and some of our supplements will be impacted. So I wanted to also bring up the point on finance, because the amount of money that the EU is putting into this is vast. If you have heard about the next generation EU, the big efforts by the EU to finance the member states, provide funds to the member states, 30% has to be devoted to sustainability. So it is big. Okay, and within the broad Green Deal, there are many aspects beyond the food sector that will impact us as well, but certainly the Farm to Fork strategy is designed for the food sector specifically. So reducing food waste, sustainable food production, and if you go to the specific actions, there are more actions that are not included in this timetable, like the code of conduct, which I've mentioned earlier in the other presentation. I want to focus on some concrete steps that are planned, as you can see from the slides, for this year or next year, so very close to us. One aspect will be nutrient profiles. So the EU aims to set nutrient profiles. This means that some foods will not be able to carry health claims if they don't have a good nutrient profile, quite basically. Now, the expectation is that food supplements will be exempt from this. However, there are many foods that you also can see here at this exhibition that from a legal standpoint are not food supplements, because they have calorie content, they are powder form, bars, there are bars, protein bars as well, they are not food supplements, so they will be impacted by nutrient profiles. So that's something that is going to happen quite soon, and some of those products may not be able to carry health claims anymore. Then we will have a front of packaging nutrition labeling coming up. You may think of Nutri-Score. You probably heard of it. It's a version, we don't know yet what the Commission will propose. Again, we think that food supplements will be exempt. But the same issues that I've mentioned before, products that maybe we perceive as food supplements but are not legally food supplements, will be impacted and will need to carry this type of mandatory information. And if you have been drinking at this exhibition, you have seen that even water has Nutri-Score here. So the expectation that we will not be affected at all is probably naive. So origin indication is not likely to affect us. And there will be rules coming on use by and best before. Those rules will change. And there are also some, at the moment, some proposal in France to make it a little bit different, so to reduce food waste. My expectation is that food supplements will not be very impacted by this, but again, like products that are not exactly food supplements from a legal standpoint, may benefit from this. Really the impetus is not to have food wasted just because the freshness is not the same as it was before. Of course, for food supplements, we have different issues in terms of the vitamins or the substances remaining there. Yes, there will be changes also to the food contact material legislation, which might make it easier to have recyclable packaging. And that's especially in farm to fork strategy. But there are many other aspects in the Green Deal that will affect us. And I wanted to start with some data collected by the Eurobarometer on European consumers, because they help us think. So 31% of the samples Europeans think that the way to tackle environmental problems is to address production and trade. So a significant proportion of Europeans think it's in regulating production and trade that you have more effect. It's not really that the consumers have to do something. I also noted that 66% said that they are already separating waste, so they are taking action. So there is, I think, despite what they said earlier, many consumers feel ready to take direct action or are already taking direct action. And 35% said 2 years ago that they are avoiding single-use plastic. So I think we discussed it a number of occasions, but probably consumers are increasingly expecting that packaging is sustainable. And we are behind as a food supplement industry, in my view, in this area. And then 80% said that it's up to the industry to do something about environmental problems. So this confirms the idea that consumers expect that it's us that are doing most of the work. This moves naturally into sustainable packaging. We don't have yet a definition in the EU, so I have used this industry definition because I felt it's useful to pinpoint some problems. In our industry, performance is certainly very important. We need certain properties from packaging, otherwise our products do not keep. So we have a precise technical challenge, perhaps certainly higher than in other food sector. Maybe even more challenging than, let's say, yogurts or dairy products. So that's certainly an issue to keep in mind, and cost. And also maybe you don't think naturally about the use of renewable energy to produce sustainable packaging. So it doesn't have only to be recyclable, but also you may be with renewable energy. And of course, it has to be safe. It is to be as safe as any other food contact material. And the last point, I think it's interesting, some companies are trying closed loops, which means that they take back the packaging that they have provided with the product. So that's something that can be considered. I've heard about different rates of success, but it's an interesting approach. I wanted to bring up some experience or advice that we have developed in this recent, let's say, months or years about packaging. And very practical advice. What we realized that sustainability is not part of the initial R&D development phase of products. So of course, companies do assess consideration of costs. They take into account availability, performance, legal compliance, but sustainability is not part of the initial assessment. So they don't think about sustainability when they consider the type of packaging they are going to use for this new product. And this is key to make a change. And sometimes they just stick to the suppliers, safe suppliers, materials they were always used without issues, and they don't even ask their suppliers what new options are out there. And our invitation is really to ask your supplier what new options you have available for us. Then you need documentation, and you need documentation before really put the product on the market. You can't get documentation on green compliance, let's say green compliance, environmental compliance, after you are challenged if you make green claims. So you need to have the documentation early on. Also on the legal and safety aspects, it's not very easy because the rules about recycled materials are a bit complex in terms of food contact materials, so you need to access that documentation. And if you make green claims, you need the documentation. And also, in terms of doing appropriate environmental labeling, which has become mandatory in many member states. So you need good documentation as well. So green claims, and we'll see some, are an options, and then you have to consider also how the the API regulation are implemented in that country. And again, and finally, special programs, again, I'm referring to closed loops. Some companies give the options to consumers to send back, once they have finished the product, to send back with no cost the packaging. So that's an option to consider. I wanted to bring up the case of black plastic. I have nothing against black plastic. I actually find black plastic packaging attractive, and you can see many examples at this exhibition. But the truth is that black plastic packaging is in theory often recyclable, but in practice it is not, because the sorting equipment in many places is unable to differentiate it. So even if you as a consumer you separate it, then it can't be recycled because the systems do not distinguish it. So it ends up in landfill or is incinerated. So that's I mean, maybe that's why the point I made before. Maybe you decide that black plastic is really necessary. I'm going for it anyhow. If you have not committed to certain sustainability goals, but you have to know that you are making a decision of something that is not going to be in practice recyclable. And this also has regulatory implications because you may ask, is it recyclable? And then your supplier tells you it's recyclable. But if in practice, in your region you are, in the country you are, the sorting technology is not capable of differentiating it, your claim is untrue. Because in principle it's recyclable, but in your country it is not. So you'll be accused of misleading information. So you have to keep in mind all these risks and potentially to sign up to commitments in this area. So another emerging aspect is compostable packaging. Particularly compostable plastic, there is an ISO definition, which means I took this picture from a good paper that I advise you to read. And basically you start from biomass, from corn, you make bioplastic, you make packaging with potentially good barrier properties, so you can use it also for food supplements, and then it can be composted, and once it's composted, it can be used again in soil to grow plants. So, and you've probably seen in supermarkets for many products, they are coming, they are available, but you are seeing less of that in the food supplement industry. So you choose compostable packaging, and you'd like to tell consumers that you have made this choice, but there are rules on that. There are two types of composting, industrial and domestic. So, and the requirements are different. So not all compostable material can also be composted domestically. And for example, in France, if it cannot be, it's not compostable at the domestic level, you can't use the claim. In Italy, you have specific rules, so you have to assess that carefully. So you just, you need to look at what the package is available, the functionality, but also on the regulatory requirements. So green claims, there are many concerns around green claims. So claims of recyclability. One is that the information is not transparent and verifiable, or is vague, and like climate friendly. And this is likely to be banned in the EU as we go forward. You can't say something as generic as environmental friendly, climate friendly. Or confusing information, I've mentioned an example in which you claim that something is biodegradable, but in a place where there is no differentiation of bio-waste, so in reality it is not true. Or you make a claim on an impact of your product, whereas the biggest impact is something else. So you make a claim about the brand, sustainability of a brand, where in reality it applies only to some of the products. Or weak commitments without accountability. In this context, I'd like to bring up the International Alliance of Dietary Supplement Association guidance, which is quite recent. it is not binding, of course, but it brings up again a number of principles. It looks at sustainability also in terms of societal sustainability, social values. It brings out also up also life cycle planning, management of products, and as an activity in which companies should be engaged, setting objectives and assessing them periodically, and first of all raising awareness. And my impression in talking to CEOs at this exhibition as well is that when you start to talk about this, they have a vague idea, maybe they have heard of it in some areas, but they don't realize this is going to apply to food supplements as well. So only use substantiated claims, we've mentioned this before. Be accurate in the information you provide, and also be mindful of fair competition, and that's an increasing concern as there are more clean claims. You know, the issue of the lack of a level playing field is certainly a fair one. And then you can't. I got asked this question. So for sustainability, can we compromise on safety? Can we have a different balance? My answer is no. You can't. We can't, as an industry, compromise on quality, on safety, or sustainability. We have to advance on both fronts. The EU has many proposals. Some are just, but we don't have rules yet. But we have the proposal on greenwashing, and we know, as I mentioned before, that the intention is to ban all vague environmental claims. Green with no eco will be banned. No claims about the entire product, but really the information concerns only an aspect. And no voluntary sustainability label which are not based on third-party verification. And this, it's also in the next slide, I think, yeah. So I think that we need to accept or realize that we are going towards something similar to organic farming, in which you will need third-party verification. So we are used sometimes to make up our own logos, our own quality mark on the products, and we don't have third-party verification. But I think there is a clear intention to regulate these claims in a way that you will need third-party verification, as for example in organic farming. Some thoughts on impact of supply chains. I mean, I think the EU will set higher standards for environmental and social sustainability, and this is to be expected. There is a discussion on whether this may translate in levies or fees for products coming from outside the EU. It may be possible that this will come to pass. I think I am certain that every partner in supply chain will need to provide more information about cultivation, harvesting, if it's botanicals, production, or in terms of their impact on the environment and societal impact. This is going to become or mandatory or almost mandatory. So my advice is to start to collect the information now. I would expect third-party certification to become a norm, so that's again going to impact the entire supply chains, also besides Europe. There is reasonable expectation of increased costs in the short term as this comes into force, and probably an emphasis on resilience. We don't know exactly the shape of this. It might be that the EU will emphasize more bringing supply chains back to Europe in terms also of raw materials. So, so my main point is really that if you walk around, you see there are some sustainability claims, there are sustainability pledges, some companies advertise it, but it's still really minor. And I think many people in the industry still think that the Green Deal, sustainability aspects, the request for consumers will not be so important for our industry. I think not. I think we will be forced to fit by regulation, if nothing else, into this framework. And so we need to prepare and possibly take advantage of what is going to happen in terms of consumer demand, in terms of our own responsibility, in terms of regulation in this area. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Luca. We do have time for a question, so I want to ask if the in-person audience has any questions, and if so, I'll bring the microphone. If not, we do have a few questions coming in from the online audience. We do have a question from the in-person.
Thank you for your very interesting presentation. I noticed your comments on the black plastic and use of that. But if you sometimes we need them to protect the product for the effect of light, mainly. Are there any alternatives that are more sustainable that you are aware of?
Okay. I don't want to, thank you very much for the important comment. I don't want to recommend an alternative at the moment. There are alternatives that are being explored. My main point was, as you're saying, okay, be aware that this is an issue. Go to your suppliers and ask them what alternatives are there. And also, it is possible that in the country, in the place where you are selling your product, then the sorting technology has caught up. So these are the things that you need to consider for...
yeah, at the moment I'm only aware of aluminum layers, but
yes.
They are probably worse than the black plastic, so...
Yes, so it's not easy. I understand it's not easy, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we do have time for one more question. There is an online audience is asking, when are gummies considered food supplements and when are they considered food? Are they affected by the nutritional profile for health claiming?
So the second question is easier, because if you answer the first question, then you have your answer. If they can be classified as food supplements, then they are very likely to be exempted. It is down to the definition of food supplement. The food supplement is considered a form of a substance in small units in a number of formats. So in general, I think it is understood that gummies can be food supplements. But we are a little bit on the borderline on this in terms of, and I would consider very much the energy that your daily dose is providing overall. So I think the concentrated substance which are in the product and the overall energy of your daily dose. Those are the considerations. In practical terms, so far, I would say that all authorities in the EU are accepting gummies as food supplements. So that's the... I also take this opportunity to raise a concern that we have really, which is on safety and regulation on gummies, is that some consumers are using gummies or candies and they don't realize they are food supplements, so you can't take as many as you would like to eat. So that's something that if you are in gummies, you should keep in mind that consumers need to be informed that it's not like a candy you take, every 15 minutes. And that's especially for children that we know out of experience sometimes do mistake food supplements which are gummies as ordinary gummies.